Hadouken!
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with some more Batman the Animated Series. I'm very excited to be continuing our journey with Mr. Freeze through the animated series and even beyond. Last time we left off, we covered Victor's introductory episode, Heart of Ice, which I think is a fantastic watch. Deploying the character, his origins, motivations, and intentions all jam-packed into one episode. My biggest praise I could give is that there's no major fumbles within the episode. My biggest complaint was that there wasn't more episode. How will we proceed with the character here? Guess we'll just have to find out by getting to it. I usually like to say which episode / season this episode is tied to, but I'm getting a couple different answers. I've seen season 3 episode 10, I've seen season 2 episode 19. Last time I checked HBO Max, it was listed as season 2 episode 15. Regardless, we're going to be moving on to Victor's second outing in the episode Deep Freeze. At the end of Heart of Ice, we got a look at the melancholic state of Mr. Freeze in his cell, and the very same prison is where we're going to be starting this episode. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here because this episode moves a mile a minute. Regardless of where we are, you know we're going to be getting a jailbreak with Skynet launching its first Terminator, the T-100. This thing is just completely unfazed by anything in its path. Bullet fire? No problem. Frag grenades? Didn't even feel it. Skynet has one goal in mind, and that's to secure and spring Victor. Interestingly, it sports a similar cold beam to something Mr. Freeze himself would fire. In the follow-up scene, Batman and Robin are reviewing the footage taken of the Unwilling escape, and I want to point out that it is Batman and Robin looking at this footage. That means Freeze has been staying here for years without even any attempts to leave. In Heart of Ice, Robin wasn't a thing. No Robin. In large part, my guess as to why this is that both flames of Victor's motivation have been snuffed out. He can't search for a cure for Nora because in his eyes she's dead, and the target of his vengeance was taken off the table by a third party. To contrast some of Batman's other rogues, none of us would be surprised if any of the others were out of Arkham the very same night. And if Victor did make any attempts to escape, I assume that would have been an episode of its own. Moving on, Bruce and Dick suss out that Freeze was taken against his will with someone that has an affinity for robotics. And who do we know that's ecstatic for electronics? Carl Rossum? I'm gonna say Rossum. I'll be honest, it's been forever and a half since I watched the animated series all the way through, so I didn't remember who this guy was. Carl Rossum was involved in Heart of Steel Part 1 and 2 and his Silicon Soul. Funnily enough, which are some episodes that I've thought about covering on this channel. Always cool to see little bits of continuity throughout the season. While Rossum might have been behind the initial design, this is not actually his work, pointing our caped crime fighters in the direction of Grant Walker. To be completely honest, I thought this was going to be a case of where Rossum pointed us in the direction only for the trail to be cold, and for it to actually come back around and it to have been him the whole time. Spoilers, no, Grant Walker is actually behind all this. And as quickly as we are involved with Rossum, we are just as quickly moving along to the destination of the beefed up M9 robot. YouTube videos of this nature already feel as if they move awfully quick, but by this point I was already really feeling that way about this episode. Mr. Freeze finds himself in
I chose. Rapture.
We get a small touching though scene between Walker and Freeze, really just giving us that Oceana is going to be the location the rest of the show takes place at. Batman and Robin are of course in pursuit, attempting to give some perspective on Walker through Batman's eyes.
Still don't see why a theme park mogul would kidnap Mr. Freeze.
Men like Walker are obsessed with getting their own way, and they don't let little things like the law stop them.
We get a little action scene in the Batboat / Bat Sub. This is totally decent in my eyes as far as action scenes are concerned. I really like how we get to play with differing levels of traversal in this scene, and it's just another side in which Batman can be challenged. My biggest complaint with the episode at this point is that a lot of things are happening without a lot actually happening, if that makes any sense. We're just kind of moving on scene by scene without doing anything interesting with these characters. Another spoiler that's going to reflect a lot of this episode. The Bat Sub is blown up, which I said something to a similar effect in our last episode we went over, but it's just strange to see Batman handled so effectively because I've gotten so used to future iterations where this guy just handles any given situation expertly. Regardless, Oceana, which I'm just going to call Rapture for the rest of the episode because it's just more fun for me, Rapture has been infiltrated. Finally, the onion gets peeled back another layer. Freeze is outfitted with a recreated version of his suit, which we originally saw him in. We get to finally know what this episode is actually about.
Do you realize that in your frozen state you will age much slower than an ordinary human? You're practically immortal, my friend. Look at me, Mr. Freeze. I'm an old man. I've created wonders in my lifetime, but there is still so much to do. I want to change as you have. to become like you.
We find out that Freeze is virtually immortal, and Walker wants what Freeze has. As an elderly man closing in on the ends of his mortality, I can understand the perspective of envy Walker has. I myself feel as if there's never enough time to go around. The biggest thing this conversation does is share more on Victor's perspective of his own affliction. He doesn't want this life, he hates it. It's a curse to him to live out the rest of his days without the thing that is most dear to him, and on top of that, we get a nice line.
Old and infirm as you are, I'd trade 1,000 of my frozen years for your worst day.
At this point, Freeze is unwilling to go along with whatever Walker has in mind, but a different bargaining chip gets thrown onto the table. What's behind door number 1? It's your thought-to-be-dead wife. Literally, how? With the leverage of his wife on the table, Victor's hand is forced. The overall reluctance in his voice is what is the most interesting part of all this to me.
All you have to do is grant my wish.
Very well.
Doubling down on this, I could totally be wrong here, but I feel whenever Freeze is involved in almost anything, it's rarely to his own accord, and he just happens to be a byproduct of somebody else pulling the strings. Like I said, that could be wrong, it's just a feels like statement. At this point, we're roughly halfway through the episode, so whatever this episode needs to do, whatever it needs to say, has to be wrapped up in roughly 9 or so minutes. Batman and Robin begin to scope out the ongoings of this place, just getting a lay of the land. Rapture is under the guise that it was going to be built to be a new theme park, but in all actuality, Walker is going to essentially be building a gated community. Now, there's nothing particularly wrong with that, but for some reason, in his deranged mind, he has to freeze Gotham to do so.
Now, of course, you can't have spring without a little winter. About 5 years of it, I'd say. I'm only speeding up what they were doing to themselves.
That is not true.
I don't fucking know, dude. Batman and Robin get spotted by some security drones. I'm not really sure how. They didn't do anything to blow their cover, and they were already presumed to be dealt with a whole boat scene prior. It's just likely that they felt they needed more action in the episode. That's about the extent of it in my eyes. While they had managed to take out a couple, once again, it's just very strange to see Batman and Robin just dealt with. One thing I did want to address is when Walker's actually talking to Batman and Robin. Walker's perspective is eerily similar to something like an evil counterpart of Superman.
My world will have no crime, violence, or pain.
You can add free will to that list, too.
A small price to pay for order.
Think about it. A world where there's no crime, no victims, no pain, and no choice.
After the scene, Batman tries to reason with Freeze to stop helping Walker, but Freeze has too much skin in the game, subduing the two, giving them a front row seat of what's to happen next. The accident that caused Victor's affliction being recreated on Walker, and to my own surprise, it works. This small segment between Batman and Freeze is where the real meat of the episode is, what little there is at least. Freeze parts ways with Walker after everything is said and done, being left alone with Batman, Robin, and his still frozen wife. Batman attempts to appeal to Victor through what would be the eyes of his wife, what she would be waking up to, and if he really thinks she'd be okay with any of this.
She'll wake up in a dead, frozen world that you helped destroy. She'll hate you for that.
Silence.
You think you're alone now? Wait until she learns the truth.
While Victor knows Batman is right, of course he can't help but to be conflicted being so close to everything he's ever wanted. Ultimately, Freeze chooses the high road, setting free Bruce and Dick, and willing to stop all this. The only thing is I don't like how immediately Freeze changes his mind. I really feel as if we need another scene where Freeze is kind of questioning all this, letting the viewer know that there's a small shift going on. Like I said, problem with the 22-minute format. The only problem now is that the episode has roughly 4 or 5 minutes to wrap all this up, and does it succeed? Well, Freeze does what he does best and starts freezing everything in sight with the aid of Batman and Robin. There isn't any real hiccups in all this. Freeze just starts to overload the main power core, which will...
That's the main power core. An overload will blow this city out of the water.
Exactly.
Rapture begins to freeze itself solid. In the process of everyone evacuating, our Cape crime fighters split off from Victor. Freeze elects to stay behind with his wife, and while they do try to stop him from encasing himself in what would be an icy tomb, I don't think he had to freeze Robin. Like, I get what he was doing, worry about your own and not me. I just think he could have froze the doorway behind him. Rapture is destroyed, Batman, Robin, and presumably all the other civilians escape, and we wrap up the episode with Bruce and Dick chatting about the recent events, only throwing out that Freeze might still be a card on the table for a future date, ending with a final shot of Freeze and Nora being encapsulated in ice together, spending who knows how long like this. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Deep Freeze. I'll keep it a buck here, this episode was not it. Like, it's fine, but after the quality we got from Heart of Ice, I was just kind of hoping for more for one of my favorite characters in the show. For an episode that's about Mr. Freeze, this episode isn't really about him much at all. All Deep Freeze really does is spring Victor from prison and put Nora back on the table for a bargaining chip to get what would be a sympathetic character to do something villainous, and not even of his own accord. Having a gated community is fine and all, but you really didn't have to freeze Gotham to do so. All these scenes within the episode were so touch and go, we didn't get to spend any significant time with any of the characters. The biggest note in all of this is when Bruce is actually reasoning with Freeze. He is someone that can be reasoned with. I like that. I just needed a couple more moments of that. Things also wrap up far too quickly, like Mr. Freeze just freezes everything and then blows up the place. That's it. After everything is said and done, I really won't go out of my way to watch this episode again. It's like a 6 for me, dog. Thanks for watching. Our next stop shop for when Mr. Freeze comes back is of course going to be Cold Comfort. Sorry it took so long to get here. I'm a pretty busy dude that works on 2 other channels, but I appreciate your patience. If you guys want to see more, you can check out the rest of the channel, and if you want to see more of me as a human, you can check out my other channels. One being where I primarily talk about my favorite genre, fighting games. Sometimes I talk about other things, but my other channel in which I take part in with one of my dearest friends, Dual Shock, where we play games, vibe, and have a good time. I'll see you guys in the next one, and I'm gonna go play some more Mario Odyssey. Later.